So with heroine mode comes a richness, a growth, a satisfaction that you simply cannot experience when you're in regular person mode. And that growth and satisfaction is what has you showing up at a completely different level, and it has the people around you noticing you and feeling magnetized to you. So not only do you start to get strong, but the environment around you begins to respond. And as you step into heroine mode, you will see more opportunities being given to you over time.
Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. If you've been listening for a while, that is amazing. And please come say hi to me, by the way. I love connecting with people who have found the show right when it came out and are still listening. If so, you are amazing. And if you're newer to the show, it's so good to have you here. I'm so glad that you found the podcast. I'm Jess. I'm the creator of this show. I'm a women's career and leadership coach. And today, I'm doing a solo episode on something that feels really timely and really exciting. And it's something that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. And almost everything that I share with you on the show is something that I'm either going through in my life, in my own growth, or something that I've gone through in past growth. And what I'm sharing with you today is something that is really, really current for me and has been so helpful in getting me to stretch myself and aim for new, big, scary things. And I think it will help you too. So today is a solo episode, and I'm going to walk you through how I think about growth and building confidence and moving towards the goals that are important to you. And I think that this is a topic that doesn't get discussed enough in the context of the 9-to-5 world and the corporate world, because I think sometimes at work, when we're growing and developing, we get so focused on like the day-to-day and the projects that we rarely step back and think about our own growth and think about whether we're showing up at our fullest possible capacity. And this episode is really designed to help you show up at your fullest possible capacity so that you can grow and achieve things that maybe feel impossible right now to your brain. And I want to walk you through a way of thinking that is really going to help you do that. So the way that I want you to think about this is that there are two modes that you can be in at any given time. And I'm going to call them regular mode and heroine mode. So regular mode is when you're just being a regular human. You're going about your life day to day. You're a little bit on autopilot. You're not really pushing yourself or stretching yourself. You're just showing up, getting through the day, and going home. Heroine mode is when you're showing up as a hero, like a superhero or a heroine. And when you're in heroine mode, you're showing up at a much higher level. You're setting ambitious goals. You're pushing yourself to show up with more bravery and courage. You're facing your fears. You're doing things that scare you. You're taking risks. And when you're in heroine mode, you grow a lot faster and you build confidence a lot faster because you're challenging yourself and you're pushing yourself to always give your best. Now, one thing that I would want you to consider and think about is that I think sometimes, because as humans, we can be a little bit risk averse and we don't like uncertainty and we like things to be a sure thing and we sometimes like things to be guaranteed. I think sometimes we trick ourselves and we tell ourselves that we're in heroine mode, but really we're just working harder and harder and harder and doing more and more and more, rather than truly being in heroine mode, which is we're doing brave things and we're doing the things that scare us. So being in heroine mode has nothing to do with how much work you're doing or the quantity of work you're doing. It has to do with how brave and courageous you're being. And I think that that's really important because I think sometimes you might find yourself wanting to build confidence without actually doing the hard work and without actually doing anything scary. And you'll know this is you if you're willing to listen to maybe a bunch of podcast episodes and you'll listen to every single podcast episode, but you're less willing to actually take the advice and follow what the podcast is telling you to do. So you want to consume the information and do all the homework and be like the really, really good student. But then when you're sitting in the meeting at work and it comes time to make the choice of whether you speak up or you have an opportunity to volunteer for something bigger, or maybe go out and apply for jobs that feel like a stretch, when those things come up, you're not necessarily pushing yourself to do those things. And what's really, really important is to make an intentional choice about whether you want to be in regular mode or whether you want to be in heroine mode, and own your choice. I'm going to share with you some signs that will tell you whether you're in regular mode or whether you're in heroine mode. And then I'm going to walk you through why you might want to choose to be in regular mode versus in heroine mode, because they offer different drawbacks and different benefits, and only you get to decide what you want. And then I'm going to share with you some thoughts and concepts and ideas that will help you should you choose to up-level yourself and should you choose to get into heroine mode when it comes to your career. And of course, you can get into heroine mode for anything, right? This can work for anything, but because this is a career show, I'm specifically thinking about your 9 to 5, about your role, about your job. So here are some signs that will help you figure out whether you're in regular mode or whether you're in heroine mode. The first thing that will help you figure it out is what type of goals you are working towards. When you are in regular mode, you still have goals, but they're very realistic. They're very attainable, and they feel very doable. So your goals don't make you uncomfortable. They don't stir up any big fear. They just seem very reasonable. I'm just imagining like the stereotypical reasonable person being really reasonable and setting reasonable goals. If you have really reasonable goals, you are in regular person mode. When you are in heroine mode, you set goals based on what you want, and you don't limit your goals based on what you think is quote unquote realistic, which means that when you are in heroine mode, your goals should make you a little bit uncomfortable because your brain can't necessarily envision the path from where you are to where your goal is. And that's why it requires more bravery and more audacity, because you have the courage to put a stake in the ground and say, I want to do this thing. I want to get this job. This is the type of presence that I want to have in meetings. This is how I want to feel. These are the results that I want to get in my role. When you put a stake in the ground and you make those things bigger than you can imagine in the current moment, you have to suspend your disbelief versus when you set really small incremental goals, you can see how you're going to get there. And it doesn't require as much of that audacity. So the type of goals that you have will help you figure out what mode you're in. And I also want to clarify something because I don't want to send any mixed messages or confuse you at all, because a lot of the times on the show, and I'll continue to talk about, I talk about taking tiny steps, right? I always talk about growing by making your next step small and bite-sized and doable. And I just want to clarify so that you can have this clear in your mind that a step is not the same as a goal. So the goal is the big vision that you're working towards over an extended period of time. It could be a few months, it could be a year, it could be 5 years, but it's not something that you're focused on today. It's something that you're going to create over a series of months or years. And that's what I'm talking about when I say setting a goal that doesn't seem totally quote unquote realistic. When I talk about your day-to-day attainment of that goal, that's when tiny steps come into play, right? Because you want to set yourself up for success. You want to make it small. You want it to be bite-sized and doable so that you build momentum and keep going. So I just want to clarify that so that you don't feel confused about why I'm saying to set this big, dreamy goal, but then sometimes I'm saying takes tiny steps. So the goal and the steps are a little bit different. But moving on to another thing that will tell you if you're in regular person mode or heroine mode. And this one is so important. If you only pay attention to this one thing, you will learn so much about yourself. And it might actually be like a little bit confronting to notice this, but it'll be really helpful professionally. When you are in regular person mode, you will avoid risk. You will avoid situations that are uncertain. You'll avoid speaking up when you're not, quote unquote, sure if you're supposed to, or you're not sure if the thing that you want to say is, quote unquote, right. You will be avoiding risk. When you are in heroine mode, you are purposefully getting out of the pattern of avoiding risks, which means you are engaging thoughtfully in, quote unquote, risky behavior. Now, let me just tell you something. I am a very type A person. And I think because that's the case, I think I have attracted a lot of other type A women who listen to this show. And if that is you, hello, I see you, I love you. I feel such a kindred spirit with you. You have no idea. So when I talk about like some of these type A habits that I'm going to talk about, I want you to know I am talking about it from personal experience. So when I talk about quote unquote risky behavior, for us type A people, this is like what feels wildly risky to us is not that risky. So like, let's be real. So when I say risky behavior, if you are a type A person like me, all I'm saying is that means you are speaking up more. You're sharing your voice in a room where you're quote unquote not sure if you're supposed to. And the reason I'm laughing and the reason I'm saying like, oh, type A people, like we think we're taking such a big risk, but we're really not, is because it's true. Like this is just like real talk. When we're in the meeting or you're in the meeting, like spinning in your head about whether like you should be speaking, there are other people in the meeting that don't have those thoughts at all. They're just like talking and not even thinking about it, right? Which is not to say like you're wrong and they're right and us type A people are wrong. It's just to say that I think sometimes it's like healthy for us to acknowledge our own neuroses and be like, okay, cool, I'm being really neurotic right now, because it gives you perspective. Sometimes you can laugh at it. But anyway, to come back to this idea of risk taking, when you're in regular mode, you are avoiding risk. And when you're in heroine mode, you are thoughtfully taking risks. And that includes acknowledging that not all risks turn out well. You're willing to take some risks that don't turn out well, because in the larger picture, in the grand scheme of things, overall, you're going to have more successes than quote unquote failures. So you're open to all of it. You're not avoiding risk and trying to only ever create successes. You're opening the gates wider to allow in some failures so that you can allow in even more successes. So that is another sign that will tell you if you're in regular mode or heroine mode. And another sign that will tell you if you're in regular mode or in heroine mode is your relationship with discomfort. One of the things that has to happen for you to grow is you have to feel and be in the experience of discomfort. I have gotten a lot of personal experience in this area over the past couple of years, growing this podcast, becoming a coach. I became really intimate with new levels of discomfort. And I learned through my own experience that discomfort is often the currency of growth. And I don't know about you, but again, if you're kind of a type A like me, and you're very smart, which all of you are, you're all smart type A women, not all of you, but a lot of you are, then when it comes to discomfort, you might do what I find my brain doing a lot of the time, which is trying to like problem solve your way to grow, without having to experience the discomfort. So a lot of the times in my brain, it won't want to be in heroine mode. I'll want to be in regular mode and avoid discomfort. And my brain will want to find a way to problem solve me to get to the growth that I want without being uncomfortable. Now, the truth is that you can't grow. Like, growth doesn't happen without getting uncomfortable, because growth happens through new things, and new things are always at some level going to be uncomfortable for your brain. Now, there are obviously exceptions to this rule, right? Like, trying a new dessert is not uncomfortable for your brain at all. But when it comes to your professional growth, and it comes to building confidence, and when it comes to becoming a powerful female leader, when you're trying to grow and you're trying to do new things in that arena, you have to get uncomfortable. And when you're in regular mode, you are avoiding discomfort. And when you're in heroine mode, you are actually thoughtfully and intentionally seeking a tolerable amount of discomfort, with tolerable being the key word, because I think there's a lot of personal development out there that's just like, go push yourself and do all the things. And that really doesn't work for me for so many reasons that I won't even begin to go into. But when we're taking on discomfort, that actually needs to be a really thoughtful, strategic process. Now, I'm sure that you can see where this is going, right? When you're in regular mode and you're setting quote unquote reasonable goals, you're avoiding risk, you're avoiding discomfort, you are slowing down your own growth. But what's really interesting is when you're in regular mode and you're doing all those things, your brain is pretty good at convincing you that you're doing it right. Because in the professional world, you don't want to mess up, you don't want to make mistakes, right? Like, you want to do a good job. So your brain might be saying like, no, like, we don't want to take risks because like, we're trying to do a good job here. We don't want to go too far out in left field and go rogue and go nuts. That's not what we're trying to do. We're part of a corporation. We're trying to climb the ladder. There's a way to do this, people, where we know what we're doing, right? So your brain might give you some of that. And cool, that's okay. I'll offer you other perspectives. You get to choose, right? You get to choose what perspective you want to take on. Now, I want to contrast this with heroine mode, where you're setting goals that feel like a stretch. The goals make you uncomfortable. You can't see exactly how you're going to get to that goal. You're thoughtfully taking risks, and you're willing to be in the failure that comes with taking those risks. And you are thoughtfully seeking discomfort. When you are doing all of those things, the growth that you experience is like exponentially, algorithmically, whatever is the fastest, steepest growth curve. That is the growth that you experience when you are in heroine mode. Because growth doesn't come from being reasonable and avoiding risk. It comes from building strength and embodied knowing and experience. And that can only happen when you bring yourself into uncharted territories. And what's really, really important is I'm not going to tell you that you have to be in heroine mode, but I am going to tell you that you should choose if you want to be in heroine mode or regular mode, and you should like your decision, and that should be a conscious decision. What you don't want to do is just have your brain be autopilot on regular mode all of the time, when that's not truly what you want. And one thing that's really important for you to think about, especially if your brain is thinking that taking risks and getting uncomfortable might not be a good idea for your career. One thing that I want you to think about is what I would call the energetic gap between where you are right now and the leader that you want to be. So if you aspire to be a strong, confident, powerful, influential leader in your space, it means that you are going to need to be able to handle more. And it is not more work. It is not more stuff. It is not executing more things. It is being able to handle more energetically. It is being able to handle more discomfort more failure, more people in the room watching you, more people on your team depending on you. These are not things that you learn how to do by executing more work. These are things that you learn how to do by stretching yourself and getting stronger so that you're able then to take up the space that leadership position requires. So when you're thinking about regular mode versus heroine mode, it is really important for you to think about where you're headed in the future. Where do you want to be 1 year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I believe that every single one of you listening has the potential to occupy whatever position in an organization you want to occupy. I know that the systems in these organizations aren't always equal and aren't always fair, but I believe that you have the raw potential and capability to occupy any of those positions. And what I would want you to think about is if you could get behind that belief too, what position would you want? And would it serve you to get into heroine mode today so that in 1 year or 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, you've built the strength and resilience to be able to feel ready for that position? Because I can tell you now that you will not feel ready for it by staying in regular mode all of the time. At some point, you will have to stretch yourself, and your brain might try to say, no, I'll just find a way to do it without ever getting uncomfortable. And your brain is going to keep giving you that story. And that is why you need to make the choice about whether you want to get out of regular mode and into heroine mode, because your brain, when left to its own devices, is not going to go into heroine mode on its own. It is just not going to do that because that is not how brains work. The thing that your brain cares about most is not what you achieve in your career. It's not how brave you are, not how much courage you build. The thing your brain cares about most is keeping things the same. It wants to keep things the same, and it wants to keep you from taking risks. It thinks that you're still a cave lady living in a cave and there's scary bears out there trying to eat you. And it thinks that when you speak up in the meeting or you go for the big position or you take a risk or you raise your hand for something big, it thinks that you're leaving the cave and that you might be eaten by a bear. So if you don't choose heroine mode, your brain is going to choose regular person mode. And it's really important for you to be aware of that. And it's really important for you to decide what you want to do today, not just for your growth today, but to prepare you for the future and to prepare you for that bigger position and that bigger dream that you have for yourself. I want to tell you a secret, right? And I really believe this to be true. I don't think these bigger leadership positions are so hard intellectually. They're not rocket science. They're hard energetically. They require a strong voice. They require decisiveness. They require you to have an opinion. They require you to lead people, right? So it's not just working on your intellect and getting smarter and smarter and sharper, although that's good. At some point, you have all the smarts you need. You have all the sharpness you need. And the thing that you now need to be cultivating is the ability to be brave and to take up space and the ability to handle failure and handle discomfort. And I want to share this with you now so you can make this decision now and set yourself up for the future that you want. I believe every single woman should be able to move towards the career path that she wants. I believe you should be able to make the money that you want, and you should be able to make good money. And these opportunities are out there for those of you who are willing to step into heroine mode and start getting uncomfortable and start setting goals that feel uncomfortable and start taking risks. And I know it's not easy, right? The choice to get into heroine mode, should you choose that, is not going to be the easiest thing. But the interesting thing about heroine mode is that while there are difficult things, I would say that in heroine mode, the highs are higher and the lows are lower. So it's like a black and white version of your career versus a color version. So when you're watching a film in color, the beautiful scenes are going to look more beautiful in color, and the gory, bloody, violent scenes are going to look more awful, right? And then in the black and white version, everything's going to be more dull. So when you're opting into heroin mode, you're opting for a richer experience. You're opting for higher emotions on the high side, and at times, I will say, more intense lower emotions. But what happens over time is you become proficient at riding out those emotional highs and lows, because it becomes part of your growth process, and you understand that emotions are just part of the whole process, and you become less afraid of those lows and of those bad emotions because you see how they fit in, because you've been through them before, because you know that you can handle them. So with heroin mode comes a richness, a growth, a satisfaction that you simply cannot experience when you're in regular person mode. And that growth and satisfaction is what has you showing up at a completely different level, and it has the people around you noticing you and feeling magnetized to you. So not only do you start to get strong, but the environment around you begins to respond. And as you step into heroin mode, you will see more opportunities being given to you and being magnetized to you over time. So this choice to step up into this more challenging, but also more fulfilling and satisfying version of yourself and your career will reward you if you are willing to do it over time. And when you're in heroin mode, you get to set your goals as big and high as you want. There are no limits. As long as you are willing to take the risks and do the hard things and do the work that comes with your goal, you get to pick any goal you want. You don't need to pick a reasonable goal because you're willing to make unreasonable effort. So you get to pick an unreasonable goal, but choose consciously, right? Don't try to choose an unreasonable goal and then try to make just reasonable effort and avoid risk. Choose. You're either realistic and reasonable and no risks, or you're going a little wild and you're riding the roller coaster, and it's going to be fun and it's going to be scary and you're going to get a little bit nauseous, and that's going to be part of it too. But you're still going on the roller coaster versus being the person who waits at the end of the line while their friends go on the roller coaster, right? And that's the decision that you need to make for your career. And what I want to tell you is that you get to make this decision and you get to be imperfect. You can make this decision to go into heroin mode, and you can fall out of heroin mode, and you can fall out of it and go back into regular mode and forget to show up big and bold. And that's okay, because you get to decide as many times as you want. You have as many chances as you want to make the decision and show up that way. All you have to do is keep making that decision over and over, and that decision always lies with you. And that decision can be completely independent of anything that's happened in your past. And it can be completely independent of any limitations that you might think you have. Because when you're in heroin mode, your goal is to shatter your limitations and prove them wrong. And you're not afraid to do that because you're willing to take the risks and you're willing to feel the discomfort. If you're willing to take risks, if you're willing to feel discomfort, the options for what you can do become so much wider. And that doesn't mean that the risks don't feel scary. And it doesn't mean that discomfort feels good. Discomfort feels bad because it's discomfort. But that does mean that you get so much more out of the process, and it changes what you can do for yourself in your career. And what I want to offer to you is that to fully occupy the position of a leader, and I think to be a good leader, you got to put your money where your mouth is. If you want to lead people, you have to go through your own shit. If you want to be a leader, you have to be willing to stretch yourself and get uncomfortable. And the more you do that, the better you will able to lead people, because you won't be leading them from a place of limitation and lack and fear. You'll be leading them from a place of true and genuine bravery. And who do we want leading us? Do we want regular mode people leading us, or do we want heroines leading us? We want heroines leading us. And what I'm trying to say to you is you can be one of those heroines if you choose to. And there's literally nothing about you, no struggle, no issue, no insecurity. There's nothing that prevents you from making that choice. That choice is something that is included in the human experience. Whatever you're struggling with, whatever your kryptonite is, whatever the thing is that you as a heroine struggle with, that is part of your calling. Part of your development as a heroine is to face those fears and face those challenges and face the areas where you're struggling. It's not just about getting past the struggle. It's about learning to go into the places that are hard. And it's about learning to change and learning to believe that you can change. And it is through that process that you become a leader and you become a heroine. So what I would want to offer to you and what I would want you to reflect on is, what path do you want? You don't have to be a heroine, right? I've had times in my career where I was like, I'm coasting. I'm in regular person mode right now. Like, I just want to lean back a little bit and chill. And then I've had other times where I was like hardcore in heroine mode. And right now in my life, I'm truly, really in heroine mode and pushing myself to grow and develop in ways that I haven't before. And it's been hard and difficult, but I also feel like I've kind of shaken myself awake and become more alive. And that's why I want to share this with you, because it's not just about the success, and it's not just that I want you to be successful, although I really deeply want that for you so badly, but it's also about me wanting you to feel alive, and me wanting women to have this embodied experience of aliveness and just feeling amazing in your life, in yourself, and in your body. And when you start to opt into heroine mode, you start to embody that, and you start to ignite that spark, and you start to feel that. And one thing that I would want to say is, heroines do not cling on to perfection, right? So part of being a heroine is discomfort and risk, because a heroine can handle failure. So you're not running away from failure. You're growing your tolerance for it. And as you grow your tolerance for it, you actually become less stressed out over time, because you're not so afraid of things going wrong. So I want you to think about this, and I want you to think about what you want for your career, what mode you're in. Are you in regular mode or heroine mode? And I want you to really think, do you want to be in that mode? What is your conscious decision? And if you want to opt into heroine mode, what are some of the heroic acts that you are being called to do, right? The story of the heroine and the hero's journey is all about struggle. That's what makes it the story, right? And you see this in so many superhero stories too. Like, I'm not making this up. There's always a weakness. There's one thing that is the superhero's weakness, right? And that's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it good. That's what makes it juicy. And so in your calling to shift into heroine mode, that is going to be part of it, right? Your shit is going to come up and you have to face it. And I know that can feel really scary, but sometimes it's actually less scary to just face it and look at it and work through it than it is to just perpetually be running away from it. I know that you have the ability to do this. I know that all women have the ability to do this. And I would just encourage you to really think about what it is you want to create in your career, and where you can show up more like a heroine and less like a regular person, in whatever way makes sense for you, for where you're at. So that's what I wanted to bring to you today. I thought this would be a great episode for the month of January, because I know so many of us are thinking about this year and thinking about what we want to create this year and what we want this year to look like. And I just want to tell you that you're much more in control of that than you think. Don't listen to your brain when it tells you you don't have autonomy and you don't have control, because the more you listen to that, the more it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can choose right now to shift, and you can choose to start identifying those places where it's time to be brave and it's time to take risks. And I guarantee you that the highs and the things that you gain from it will outweigh some of those downsides and some of those painful moments, which are always going to be part of the process, right? The pain and the struggle is part of it, just like the wins and the good feelings are. And would we really want it to be any different? Like, would you want to go on a roller coaster that wasn't scary and only had fun parts? No, that would ruin the entire thing, right? Like, the whole point is, like, you get on and you're like, oh my gosh, why did I do this, right? And you have this entire range of experiences, from like deep fear to like, this is horrifying, to this is the most amazing thing. And that's why you feel so amazing after. And that's why your memory of that experience is so rich. It's because of that. You can only get that richness through some of the struggle, some of those scary feelings, right? And so I don't want you to be concerned about those or shy away from those, or feel like if you have fear or you struggle with certain things, then like none of this is going to work for you. It's the exact opposite. If you have fear and you have struggle, this is exactly for you. And it is your calling to face those things. So that is my encouragement for you today. I hope that you found this helpful, and feel free to reach out to me and let me know if this resonated, and let me know if you're in regular mode or heroine mode. I would be super curious and interested to hear how this applies to you. And I hope that your year has started out well, and I hope that you're feeling amazing and powerful. I've been having a wonderful new year. It's been this beautiful transition, creating my coaching business, which I'll link below if you're interested in getting support directly from me. And it's been amazing for me to experience this growth that I'm experiencing as I become a coach and to be able to bring that to you. I have enjoyed this process so much. And I feel like I have so much more to share with you in terms of how to actually become an unstoppable force in your own life. Because I know it sounds so cheesy, but it really is true. You really can build and create whatever it is you want. There is no point in believing anything else because it's not going to get you anywhere. It's only going to bring you feelings of limitation and lack. So why not opt for the thoughts that feel expansive, even if they do feel a bit quote unquote unreasonable and scary? All right, that brings me to the end of this episode. I hope you're having the most incredible day, the most incredible week. I have another interview coming next week. It's a really good one. It's long, it's winding, it's deep. Oh, it's so good and I can't wait. So definitely tune in. Come say hi to me. I'll put my contact information below and I'll catch you in the next one. All right, bye.